Lisa and I had been inseparable ever since. "Do you hear that?" she asked suddenly. It took me a few seconds to pick up what her sharper senses already had. Footsteps, moving fast. I grimaced. We had 2 more blocks to go. "We've got to run for it," I said, catching hold of her arm. "But you can't." "Run!" It took every ounce of my willpower not to pass out on the sidewalk. My body didn't want to run after losing blood or while still metabolizing the effects of her saliva. But I ordered my muscles to stop their bitching and clung to Lisa as our feet pounded against the concrete. Normally I could have outrun her without any extra effort, particularly since she was barefoot, but tonight she was all that held me upright. The pursuing footsteps grew louder, closer. Black stars danced before my eyes. Ahead of us, I could make out Jeremy's green Honda. Oh God, if we could just make it. 10 feet from the car, a man stepped directly into our path. We came to a screeching halt, and I jerked Lisa back by her arm. It was him. The guy I'd seen across the street watching me. He was older than us, maybe mid-20s, and as tall as I figured. Probably 6'6" or 6'7". And under different circumstances, say, when he wasn't holding up our desperate escape, I would have thought he was hot. Shoulder-length, brown hair, tied back in a short ponytail. Dark brown eyes, and long brown coat, a duster, I thought it was called. But his hotness was irrelevant now. He was only an obstacle, keeping Lisa and me away from the car and our freedom. The footsteps behind us slowed, and I knew our pursuers had caught up. Off to the sides, I detected more movement, more people closing in. God, they'd sent almost a dozen guardians to retrieve us. I couldn't believe it. The Queen herself didn't travel without many. Panicked and not entirely in control of my higher reasoning, I acted out of instinct. I pressed up to Lisa, keeping her behind me and away from the man who appeared to be the leader. "Leave her alone," I growled. "Don't touch her." His face was unreadable, but he held out his hands in what was apparently supposed to be some sort of calming gesture, like I was a rabid animal he was planning to sedate. "I'm not going to." He took a step forward, too close. I attacked him, leaping out in an offensive maneuver I hadn't used in 2 years, not since Lisa and I had run away. The move was stupid, another reaction born of instinct and fear, and it was hopeless. He was a skilled guardian, not a nosy who hadn't finished his training. He also wasn't weak and on the verge of passing out. And man, was he fast. I'd forgotten how fast guardians could be, how they could move and strike like cobras. He knocked me off as though brushing away a fly, and his hand slammed into me and sent me backwards. I don't think he meant to strike that hard, probably just intended to keep me away, but my lack of coordination interfered with my ability to respond. Unable to catch my footing, I started to fall, heading straight towards the sidewalk at a twisted angle hip first. It was gonna hurt. A lot. Only it didn't. Just as quickly as he blocked me, the man reached out and caught my arm, keeping me upright. When I'd steadied myself, I noticed he was staring at me, or more precisely at my neck. Still disoriented, I didn't get it right away. Then slowly my free hand reached up to the side of my throat and lightly touched the wound Lisa had made earlier. When I pulled my fingers back, I saw slick, dark blood on my skin. Embarrassed, I shook my hair so that it fell forward around my face. My hair was thick and long and completely covered my neck. I'd grown it out for precisely this reason. The guy's dark eyes lingered on the now covered bite a moment later, longer than met mine. I returned his look definitely and quickly, jerked out of his hold. He let me go, though I knew he could have restrained me all night if he wanted. Fighting the nauseating dizziness, I backed towards Lisa again, bracing myself for another attack. Suddenly her hand caught hold of mine. "Rose," she said quietly, "don't." Her words had no effect on me at first, but calming thoughts gradually began to settle in my mind, coming across the bond. It wasn't exactly compulsion. She wouldn't use that on me. But it was effectual, as was the fact that we were hopelessly outnumbered and outclassed. Even I knew struggling would be pointless. The tension left my body and I sagged in defeat. Sensing my resignation, the man stepped forward, turning his attention to Lisa. His face was calm. He swept her a bow and managed to look gracefully doing it, which surprised me considering his height. "My name is Dmitri Belbok," he said. I could hear a faint Russian accent. "I have come to take you back to St. Vladimir's Academy, Princess." Chapter 2. My hatred notwithstanding, I had to admit Dmitri was pretty smart. And after they catered us off to the airport and onto the Academy's private jet, he'd taken one look at the two of us, whispering and ordering us separated. "Don't let them talk to each other," he warned the guardian who escorted me back to the plane. 5 minutes together, and they'll come up with an escape plan." I shot him a haughty look and stormed off down the aisle. Never mind the fact we had been planning an escape. As it was, things didn't look good for our heroes, or heroines, rather. Once we were in the air, our odds of escape dropped further. Even supposing a miracle occurred and I did manage to take out all 10 guardians, we'd sort of have a problem getting off the plane. I figured they might have parachutes aboard somewhere, but in the unlikely event, I'd be able to operate one. There was still that little issue of survival, seeing as we'd probably land somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. No, we weren't getting off this plane until it landed in backwoods Montana. I'd have to think of something that involved getting past the Academy's magical wards and 10 times as many guardians. Yeah, no problem. Although Lisa sat at the front with the Russian guy, her fears sang back to me, pounding inside my head like a humming hammer. My concern for her cut into my fury. They couldn't take her back there, not to that place. I wonder if Dmitri might have hesitated if he could hear what I did, feel what I did, and if he knew what I knew. Probably not. He didn't care. As it was, her emotions grew so strong that for a moment I had the disorienting sensation of sitting in her seat, in her skin even. It happens sometimes, and without much warning, she'd pull me right into her head. Dimitri's tall frame sat beside me, and her hand, gripped a bottle of water. He leaned forward to pick up something, revealing 6 tiny symbol tattoos on the back of his neck. Manji marks. They looked like 2 streaks of jagged lightning crossing an X symbol, one for each Strigo he killed. Above them was a twisted line, sort of like a snake, that marked him as a guardian, the promise mark. Blinking, I fought against her and shifted back into my own head with a grimace. I hated when that happened. Feeling Lisa's emotion was one thing, but slipping into her was something we both despised. She saw it as an invasion of privacy, so I usually didn't tell her when it happened. Neither of us could control it. It was another effect of the bond, a bond neither of us fully understood. Legends existed about psychic links between guardians and their Mori, but the stories had never mentioned anything like this. We fumbled through it as best as we could. Near the end of the flight, Dmitri walked back to where I sat and traded places with the guardian beside me. I pointedly turned away, staring out the window absent-mindedly. Several moments of silence passed. Finally, he said, "Were you really going to attack all of us?" I didn't answer. Doing that, protecting her like that, it was very brave. He paused. Stupid, but still brave. "Why did you even try it?" I glanced over at him, brushing my hair out of my face so I could look him levelly in the eye. "Because I'm her guardian." I turned back toward the window. After another quiet moment, he stood up and returned to the front of the jet. When we landed, Lisa and I had no choice but to let the commandos drive us out to the academy. Our car stopped at the gate, and our driver spoke with guards who verified we weren't Strigo about to go off on a killing spree. After a minute, they let us pass on through the wards and up to the academy itself. It was around sunset, the start of the vampire day, and the campus lay wrapped in shadows. I probably looked the same, sprawling and gothic. The Mori were big on tradition. Nothing ever changed with them. This school wasn't as old as the ones back in Europe, but it had been built in the same style. The buildings boasted elaborate, almost church-like architecture, with high peaks and stone carvings. Wrought iron gates enclosed small gardens and doorways here and there. After living on a college campus, I had a new appreciation for just how much this place resembled a university more than a typical high school. We were on the secondary campus, which was divided into lower and upper schools. Each was built around a large open quadrangle decorated with stone paths and enormous century-old trees. We were going towards the upper school's quad, which had academic buildings on one side, while Danforth's dormitories and the gym sat opposite. Maury dorms sat on one of the other ends, and opposite of them were the administrative buildings that also served the lower school. Younger students lived on the primary campus, farther to the west. Around all the campuses was space, and more space. We were in Montana, after all, miles away from any real city. The air felt cool in my lungs and smelled of pine and wet, decaying leaves. Overgrown forests ringed and the perimeters of the academy, and during the day you could see mountains rising up in the distance. As we walked into the main part of the upper school, I broke from my guardian and ran up to Dimitri. "Hey, comrade." He kept walking, wouldn't look at me. "You want to talk now?" "Are you taking us to Curva? Headmistress Curva?" he corrected. On the other side of him, Lisa shot me a look that said, "Don't start something." "Headmistress, whatever. She's still a self-righteous old bit." My words faded as the guardians led us through a set of doors straight into the commons.